Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be doing a video where I'm kicking off a little series in order to catch up on all the books that I've read over the past kind of couple of months, because I sort of missed my July wrap up, and I know it's only mid-August, but I read quite a lot of books in July because I was on holiday, so I had a lot to talk about. So I thought I'd break it down because I feel like my wrap-ups get a bit overwhelming sometimes because they're always like 50 minutes long and blah blah blah. So I'm gonna do a series of recent reads. So I've got 3 to film today, and I'm gonna do like 10 books in each. Although one of them is sort of a bit more than 10, but like it's series. But that's not this one anyway, so we'll talk about that in the next video. But so yeah, so for the next like 3 uploads or whatever, I'm going to be doing some recent reads because I've read some really good books, especially this one. I think I have about 3 5-star reads, or maybe 2 5 stars and 1 4.5 star. But yeah, some new favourites, definitely. The first book I read was 7 Deaths of an Empire by G.R. Matthews. I think that's the author. I'll put a picture in anyway. I know I didn't put pictures in my last video and then a lot of people complained. I was trying to be lazy and I thought I would get away with it, but I didn't. But yeah, I will do it again now. We are following 2 kind of POVs. There's a general, I think it's called Bordan, and then a little apprentice whose name I've forgotten because it's been a while. I think it begins with a K. And basically the general is trying to wrangle the royals. I don't know how to explain that better. So I think the king has been killed, and now the kind of prince and princess are sort of almost vying for the throne a little bit. So well, the prince has now become king, so the general's trying to help him, but then more stuff happens and it all gets a bit dramatic. And then we're following the apprentice guy who is on the sort of front lines of the war, and he is kind of bumbling along. Like, I think he's helping escort the body of the king back to the like capital, but various magical threats assail them along the way. And he is an apprentice magician, the young one. And there is a connection that you find out partway through the book between the apprentice and the general. And so their storylines do kind of tie together. But yeah, it's very much a bit of a political like plotting, and there's a lot of kind of scheming and plotting, and like it is good in that sense. And there's a bit of like backstabbing, and there's a little hint of magic. I feel like the magic was just kind of teased, and I feel like there'll be more in the sequel. So I gave this one 3 stars. Maybe 3.5. I don't know. I feel like I just didn't care about the characters enough to give it a higher rating. And like it was fun to read, and like the writing was solid, and it was a pretty good plot. Like it kept moving. It wasn't too long. I feel like sometimes fantasy books can drag. But no, I feel like I read it quite quickly actually. But yeah, I just feel like I didn't care about the characters enough. I will probably read the sequel when it comes out. Yeah, I think if you're just looking for like a fun fantasy with a bit of like politics and backstabbing, it's good. But if you're looking for like a new all-time favourite, like it's gonna blow your mind, that's maybe not what it is, if that makes sense. Yeah, so then I read The Pariah by Anthony Ryan, and this is actually the first Anthony Ryan book I've ever read, and I actually really enjoyed it. It definitely gave me Name of the Wind vibes, but I like the main character a lot more. So I gave it 3.75 stars, but kind of rounded up to 4, so maybe 4 stars, probably 4. Oh, my eyes are itchy, got too much makeup on. Anyway, following this character called Alwyn, and at the start of the book he is kind of living in this like band of outlaws in the forest, and when I first started reading it I was like, is this a Robin Hood retelling? But it's not. I think that's just a commonality. But anyway, Alwyn I really liked as a character. I think he sort of made the book for me because I think it is a bit of a character study, and I feel like if you hadn't liked Alwyn you wouldn't have enjoyed the book at all. But I really liked him. He's very kind of cheeky and like a bit sassy and like charming, and I don't know, he was just a really sort of fun character. Anyway, so he starts the story in this like band of outlaws, and there's this outlaw king guy, and basically the outlaw king is trying to plot to overthrow the local duchy. But then the plot all goes wrong, and Alwyn ends up, well, I think at first he ends up in like pits or the mines or something, and then he ends up kind of being recruited by this kind of leader of this sort of religious cult, and he sort of gets dragged into the war through this, I can't remember her name, but she's kind of this, yeah, like a saintly figure. So one thing I really liked about this book was its kind of tie-in between like politics and religion, and how the religion and this kind of almost cult-like saint thing, and how Alwyn kind of gets sucked into that. I thought it was really interesting. And again, similar to the first book I talked about, there's not a huge amount of magic in this one. I feel like the magic just gets kind of teased a little bit. But yeah, I always really like when fantasy books kind of explore religion, and how that influences the kind of power scape and yeah, events of the book. So I thought that was very interesting. And I really liked Alwyn, the main character, has a friend. I think she's called Tori. That I might be remembering that wrong, but I really liked their friendship. That was kind of cute. So yeah, I enjoyed that book. I would definitely recommend it. It is quite long though. But I guess there is a lot in it, and the writing is really good actually. I was very impressed by his writing. Then next we have The Black Coast, which I gave 4.5 stars, and I really like this one. It was very like refreshing. Like, it gave you all the kind of classic fantasy and like nostalgia vibes, but also it felt kind of fresh, because it's a book where instead of there being like a major like conflict or like war like you get in a lot of fantasy books, the kind of main conflict comes from the two sides trying to find peace, and that causes a lot of drama. So basically it's following this, I think it's called Black Keep, maybe that might be a different book altogether, but so there's like keep on the coast, and these raiders come, and they think initially they're gonna like raid the town, but one of the I think the son of the person who's in charge of the keep kind of betrays his father and brother, and then gets the raiders to try and work towards peace. So that character is called Damon. He's one of the main characters. And then the main lady of the raiders who's in charge, Sana, I think it's Sana, yeah. So they have to try and work together to keep their peoples like from being at each other's throats. But there's a lot of sort of I guess misunderstanding and very different cultures, and it's really interesting to see how the way the cultures have been created by the author, they have very different things, like things we might think go together, but actually, so like the raiders are very much like kind of women in charge, like women matriarchal, like kind of empowered that way, whereas the keep people are sort of a lot more conservative in that sense, like women have their place and whatever. Whereas the keep people, but then like the keep people are very like open in terms of like like LGBTQ, like everyone can love whoever they want, whereas the raiders are very like strict on that, and they're very like homophobic. So it's like bringing together the opposing. It's not like one culture is like super liberal and open, and so it's kind of interesting in that way. And it is a very kind of queer norm world, which I really like. There's a lot of, I think in the first one there's kind of 4 main POV characters, and none of them are openly like LGBTQ, but then so many of the side characters are, and I would say it's a major kind of theme of the plot. But actually one of the characters, there's a kind of one, so the two, Damon and Sana, they're living their own little story, whatever. And then there's 2 other characters that we follow. So one is Tila, who is the sister of the God King, and she is off to try and assassinate some threat to the God King's rule. That's kind of her storyline, but I really like the dynamic between her and the God King, and I think the God King's going to get a bigger part in the second book, Splinter King, which I'm excited for. Because the prologue was one of my favourite like prologues ever. Just their dynamic is so funny. Yeah, and then we also follow Jella, who's in a kind of different country altogether, and in that country it's very interesting, the kind of gender type system they have. I don't know, so they have like high female and then low female, and then I think neutral, and then low male and high male, and so that's kind of interesting. It's like there's 5 genders rather than 2, or how many we have. 3, 4, 5, I don't know, gender's a construct. So yeah, so I think that was an interesting look, and I don't think her name is actually Jella, I can't remember her name, it might be, but I liked her story as well. She kind of teams up with this kind of rich, so she's like an orphan street thief type character, and then she ends up meeting this kind of noble who's like always sneaking out his house, and I like their story. It's kind of cute, and hopefully we see more of that in book 2. And I really liked how everything sort of came together and how the stories sort of tied in with each other. I thought was good. Yeah, so I just really enjoyed that. It's like cozy fantasy, and oh, it just feels like a little warm hug. And yeah, and I really like the characters as well. And there was this one point where they see little baby dragons, and they were all adopting baby dragons, and oh, it was so cute. So yeah, would highly recommend. Okay, then next I read Iron Widow, which I also gave 4.5 stars. Now this book, okay, it is not a masterpiece of literature, but it is so fun to read. Like, you just have the best time reading, and it's kind of empowering in a way. Like, it's very much the kind of like the main character, she is very much like a strong female lead who just doesn't take any kind of shit from anyone, but she also kind of acknowledges the mistakes she's made and how that's kind of contributed to her situation, while still being very angry at the world. She reminds me a bit of T from The Bone Witch, or Tia, I think it's actually pronounced Tia, but yeah, so I really liked her. And then she sort of ends up, so this work, I'll go back to how the worlds work. So they have these like mecha bot things that are piloted by a man and a woman, and typically the woman kind of gets drained so the man can like fuel himself and like the bot and things, so the woman often ends up dead. She murders her male pilot, or kills him, and she becomes known as this kind of Iron Widow, and she gets taken away to this like secret government facility, and then she gets teamed up with this like super grumpy, muscular pilot who's like really, he has to be like muzzled and things because he's so like bad, called Leishman. And oh, her name was just in my head then, but oh, it's escaped me. They sort of team up to be a pair, and they're kind of a balanced pair, so they don't end up killing each other. But yeah, and it's just, there's a lot of kind of drama and like, but not exactly politics, but like kind of politics, and kind of almost like the politics of fame in a way. And then, but the main girl, she also has her like childhood crush and love interest, and then, but he's like super smart, and he kind of comes into the picture, and then it turns into a bit of a polyamorous relationship, which it was probably one of my favourite parts of the book. Like, I love the whole throuple dynamic, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And yeah, so it's just a lot of fun. There's so many like angsty scenes that are just really good, and I feel like the battle scenes are actually quite well written, and the characters are just so lovable. I really like them all. Like Leishman, oh, I love him. He's like this little cinnamon roll in a really grumpy body, and oh yeah, and the main girl, she was really good, even if I can't remember her name. Yeah, I just love them all and the whole dynamic, and yeah, so I would highly recommend it. And then after I read The Infinity Courts, which I gave 2.5 stars. So this one I really was looking forward to because the cover is so pretty, and it's sort of meant to be this like afterlife thing. I can't, honestly, sometimes with books that I don't enjoy that much, I sort of block them out of my head a bit, like forget about them. So I can't quite remember what happens, but basically the main girl, she gets killed, and then she sort of wakes up in this afterlife. But the afterlife, which seemingly is like a kind of utopia, actually is more of a dystopia. And then she sort of ends up with these rebels trying to take down this sort of omnipotent AI. So I thought it was kind of interesting, especially the premise was very interesting, but I think I just didn't really care about the characters enough to like it more. And then it felt like it couldn't decide whether it was a contemporary or a sci-fi or a dystopian. I think I would say it was dystopian, but I feel like the contemporary elements, I don't know if this is just because I tend to prefer reading like hard sci-fi and hard fantasy, not even hard, like just more fantasy. Like it felt, especially the beginning, felt like a contemporary, and then it sort of, it was a bit strange like genre wise. And I know books are allowed to like bend genres and things, but it just felt like it didn't quite mesh together. I don't think I'm explaining that very well, but then I think it just sort of turned into the like classic YA dystopian, and I feel like I'm a little bit over that, but I still think it's a pretty solid book. Like, it was well written, and it was kind of interesting. Like, I read it to the end, so. And I guess it is interesting because I do find books interesting when they explore the kind of impact of sort of AI, like sentience and all that whole drama that can happen. So yeah, that's that one. And then we have Far From the Light of Heaven by Tate Thompson. So Orbit were kind enough to send me an ARC, which is very pretty actually. I like the little book. And I really enjoyed this one. So I didn't actually know before this, because I have read Tate Thompson's other books. It's called the Wormwood Trilogy. The first one's Rosewater. I've only read Rosewater. I still need to read the second two. But he is actually a doctor, like a medical doctor. I think he's a psychiatrist, which I feel like did come across in this one, because this one I think explores a sort of impact on the human psyche of being in space and being in a kind of confined environment. So they're kind of on this ship which is like piloting people in cryo sleep, but then the people in cryo sleep sort of start dying, I don't know, but then some of them and like body parts start piling up around the ship, and so it's kind of crewed by the skeleton crew. The main lady, whose name is it's Michelle, but she goes by Shell, and she's kind of in charge of the ship, and she's trying to prove herself. It was like her first kind of pilot's assignment where she's in charge. But yeah, things keep going wrong, and it becomes a sort of closed like environment, and I really like that kind of setting where it's like this closed environment, so in space, and then it becomes a bit of like a thriller horror type thing where these like bodies are appearing, and it's like, oh, what's going on, and a bit of a mystery. And I really like the people she sort of is with, because some like a family friend, uncle type character comes to help her, and his daughter, who is a great character. And I'm sure there's another character as well that it happens to be there. I think like a detective who is sent by the government to try and find out what's going on as well. And I like this sort of almost found family feeling. I think the ship as well also has a part, like, and I always love like talking AI spaceships. Yeah, and I just really like the exploration of kind of the toll on the human like mind and body, because I find medicine in space so fascinating. So yeah, that was interesting element. And also there's some kind of exploration of like cultures, and I think there's a lot of parallels to kind of modern day racism and kind of colonialism as well, which is really interesting. So definitely highly recommend this. And I feel like this is slightly, I don't want to say easier to read, but it maybe makes slightly more sense than the Wormwood books. I feel like if you tried Rosewater and you didn't like it because it was like too pretentious or too, it's a bit of a crazy book, Rosewater, but this one is a lot more kind of straightforward, but I think that's to its advantage. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, so would recommend. I gave it 4 stars, but yeah. Okay, then after I read Jodfar Gold, which I gave 3.5 stars, so this is like a YA fantasy which I think is coming out in November, and I did enjoy this, but I just feel like it wasn't anything super special to give it kind of a higher rating. But basically following these 2 characters, and I think maybe one reason I didn't love it as much as I could have is it is kind of I think it's inspired by Zutara, and I really hate Zutara as a ship. I don't know, I just feel like it would have cheapened both their character arcs. And anyway, so yeah, but so it's kind of inspired by that. And to be honest, I did like the main couple more than I like Zutara. So, but it's this peasant girl who has this kind of a mysterious ring, and she has this kind of hidden destiny that she's going to discover throughout the book. And then this prince who is in exile, because I think his family, like his uncle or something, overthrew his family, so now he's in kind of exile, and the overthrowers are in charge. I'm sure there's a better word than overthrowers. Usurper, that's it. Are in charge. So he's trying to get his kind of revenge and get his kingdom back, and then they end up meeting up together and teaming up in some way. I can't quite remember. And anyway, stuff goes down. So I thought it was interesting in that way, and I like the kind of setting. I thought that was quite cool, and the sort of mythology that was tied in, I thought that was enjoyable. But I think it just, the two main characters I didn't really love that much. They were just very kind of standard characters, but I did really like all the side characters. So the sort of two sets of side characters, and I really love them both. There's this kind of sapphic couple, one of whom is like this really sort of fun, flirty, like mercenary type, and then her like partner is a spy in the castle, and she's like working secretly with the main character, but she's like posing as a lady's maid, and I love them so much. And then also there's another, so the prince, who is now the prince, not the prince who's been exiled, who's the main character, but the prince of the usurper, the son of the usurper, who is now the prince, who is the main prince's cousin. I think I just created a web there where there didn't need to be one. But he was so cute. He was such a sweet little cinnamon roll. And then there's this other character who is kind of the main exiled prince's like best childhood friend, I think. And he's like this grumpy swordsman type character. And honestly, I thought he was the most interesting character. He has a very interesting arc. And his relationship with the prince as well, the cinnamon roll prince, was so sweet, and I hope that blossoms into something, I don't know. But yeah, so I did really enjoy the side characters. I think it just felt a little bit, I think it's the author's debut, and it was good, but I think you could kind of tell, because I feel like it's just sometimes it would kind of, there would be scenes and they just wouldn't quite feel complete, or it would like skip ahead a little bit, but or like it would have like chunks missing type thing. And I think the final sort of climax of the book felt very quick. I often feel like that with YA though, often I think, because some of the sort of exploring the like juicier details gets sacrificed for kind of a fast-paced plot, which is fair because that is sort of a thing of the genre. So yeah, that was, I don't know if that's really a criticism, but like if you're looking for a really good like final epic climax, like a sandal launch or something, then you don't really get that. But I think I would definitely recommend reading it if it sounds interesting to you, because I think it did have a lot of strengths. I think there were just some things like, yeah, I think for me, characters are such a big thing. Like if I don't fall in love with the characters, I'm not really gonna give it like a high rating than like 3.5. So yeah. Then next we have Catalyst Gate, which I gave 5 stars, and this is the final book in the Velocity Weapon series, and oh, I love this so much. I'm so attached to these characters now. Having just said I love characters, I love these characters. Oh, I love them. And yeah, I think Catalyst Gate was my favourite. Just the romances in the series. I mean, I know it's a sci-fi, and the epic like sci-fi plot is really good as well, but the romances are just so good. They're like angst and drama, and oh, the main like couple, it's kind of one of my favorite tropes, because like one of them's a spy, and just the like drama that creates. I mean, you know that from book 1, but stuff that's happened in book 2 that was very like dramatic is kind of coming to head in this book, and like finding out, and oh, it's so good. I love them so much. They're like one of my favorite couples probably in fiction. So Sander, who's the main character, I really like her as the main character. I liked her thing in this book, and she's kind of almost becoming a leader like she's meant to be. And then we have Sander's brother, Biren, who is kind of his plot, and I actually really liked his like romance as well. It's like a bit of forbidden romance, but then more revelations like come to light, and it's like more drama and angst, and I don't know, because I feel like in the second book we got a little kind of tease of that romance, but it definitely gets explored a lot more in the third book, and I really like them as well. And then Barrow, who's the spaceship, and honestly he's one of the makes the series, like if you like M-Bot and yeah, those type of characters, Barrow is just the best. I love him. I might love him even more than M-Bot, which I think is saying a lot. And I really liked in this book the relationship between Barrow and what's his name? I remember his surname. Thomas. Yeah, Thomas. Vera and Thomas, because obviously in the first book they kind of really hate each other, but then in this book they kind of start hating, and then they just start becoming like friends and partners, and oh, it's so cute. And I really like Thomas as well. He's a great character. And he was probably maybe my favourite arc in this book. Yeah, and just the enemies to friends excellence that they were serving. I mean, I know he's an AI, but it was so good. Well, actually, to be fair, if you read the book, they're more similar than not. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I just loved it. Like, it was perfect. Like, the romances, the plot was really good. I mean, I know I didn't really talk about the plot. It kept you on the edge of your toes, but it was also really well explored, and like everything came together so well, and I just loved it all. Yeah, the characters are amazing. I just really loved every bit of it, so would highly recommend that series. The first one's called Velocity Weapon, by the way, and I feel like Velocity Weapon I really liked because it has a very sort of specific style or trope. It kind of reminded me a bit of I nearly said Mark Watney's books, Andy Weir's books, where there's this kind of character trapped on a spaceship, and she's like she doesn't know when she is, she doesn't know where she is, and she's in with this spaceship and the space AI like Barrow, and she has to try and solve the mystery of like what's happened and what's going on. So yeah, but then books 2 and 3 kind of become of a more like bigger scope type plot, which I really like as well. But the twists in book 1 are really, really good. But then the rest of the book, the rest of this series, I was just really attached to the characters and everything. So would definitely recommend. So then I read This Poison Heart, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. We're following this character Brysis, and she has like plant magic, so she can sort of bring plants, like make them grow. And she lives with her mums, but they're kind of struggling a bit because they run a flower shop, but they're kind of struggling for money. But then this mysterious person turns up and says, because I think Brysis is adopted, and she has suddenly inherited this massive estate. So then they move to this estate, but there's kind of sort of creepy haunted type things going on at this house, and there's this mysterious poison garden. And then she's trying to kind of uncover her like family legacy and like what's going on in this sort of town and at the house. And so it's very good. I really like it. I really love it. Well, first of all, I love plant magic. I love the unparalleled amount of sapphic energy in this book, because like she has 2 mums and their relationship, I love it. And then Brysis herself is also sapphic and kind of has a relationship with a girl whose name I can't remember. I really like that as well. And just the whole like small town drama and like characters who aren't who you think they are, it was just really good. So I definitely enjoyed it, and would recommend. So yeah. And then the final book I read was Light from Uncommon Stars, and I love this book so much. I gave it 5 stars, obviously. And if you like Becky Chambers' book, it is an absolute must read. But even if you don't, I still think it's a must read. Just it was so good. So we're kind of following 3 main characters. So the first one is Katrina, and she is a trans girl who has been kind of kicked out by her family, and she loves music, so she plays the violin. And so I think she's run away. I'm pretty sure it's set in San Francisco. So she's run away there. And she kind of then gets taken in by this famous sort of musician mentor person who, what is her name? Today is a day of not remembering names. But anyway, she was this famous musician, but then mysteriously she sort of not disappeared from the world of music, but she became a teacher instead of a performer, and it's a little bit mysterious why. So yeah, so Katrina kind of becomes her newest student, but behind the scenes the teacher lady has actually done this deal with this demon, and she has to sacrifice 7 souls, like prodigies of music, to get back her performing talents and her ability to play the violin in front of an audience. So essentially Katrina is her last like sacrifice to this demon, and that's what she's kind of preparing Katrina for. So that's kind of interesting. But then so there's a lot of kind of classical music, and like there were some really beautiful passages where characters will be playing music, and just that kind of feeling of when you sort of listen to music and it just kind of captures all your emotions and your soul, and I just thought that was so beautifully done. And then obviously Katrina, you explore her kind of life as a trans woman, which I thought was really well done. I mean, I'm cis, so I can't really comment, but I believe the author is trans, and I feel like that was very well handled and explores a lot of the kind of hardships. And also I learned something as a medic, because I assumed you would just take estrogen, but then they take another drug called spironolactone, and I was like, why is she on this? She clearly doesn't have like heart failure or blood pressure problems. But apparently you take it and it blocks estrogen or something. So learned a new mechanism of action for a drug there. Because I googled it. That's the kind of thing that you come across in a book when you're medic, and then you think, so then you start googling, and but anyway, so yeah, so and then at the same time there's also, and I feel like when I'm going to describe this other storyline, you'll be like, how on earth do they fit together? But it just does, and it just works so well. So at the same time there's this family of aliens who are running a donut shop, and so they've just come to Earth escaping. They're kind of refugees from this, I think it's called the End Plague, and that's like coming for their system. So they've escaped to Earth, and so they're running this donut shop as a front while they try and repair their kind of spaceship to make like a portal home or a portal for other people kind of thing. So the main like mum character, she's called, I think, Lan Tran. Well, they're the trans, the family, but she is called Lan, and she's kind of in charge. And then there's like all her children, so there's like and I just love that whole family. And then also she has her like aunt or her great aunt with them, and I just love the whole family dynamic there, all the siblings, they were so cute. And yeah, so they're running this donut shop, and I love the whole like donut thing. Just that, and I think it's not so much about the donuts, but just all the discussion around food and like how it can recreate like memories, and there's kind of a bit of a storyline where the kind of aunt character and one of the children, they go on a mission, because initially they start by just replicating the donuts in their like fancy modern technology machine thing, but then they realise that actually homemade is better and like puts the love in, and I don't know, I just thought that storyline was beautiful. And then basically the musician teacher lady, she comes into the donut shop, and her and Lan, the main alien lady, start up a bit of a romance, which I also loved. And oh, it's just all so good. Like the character arcs and the characters are just great, and just the messages and themes of like hope and belonging. Oh, so if you take one thing away from this video, pre-order or go on NetGalley and request Light from Uncommon Stars, because it is so good. So yeah, so this wrap up is not any shorter than normal, despite only talking about 10 books, but anyway, hopefully I can edit it down a bit. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what your favourite book that you've read recently was. I would really love to know. And yeah, I hope you're all having a really great day, and I'll see you next time.